So I'm going to ask for your indulgence for just a minute. And to do that, I'm going to ask you to just close your eyes and just imagine what I'm asking you to. I want you to imagine a child in a large, rich room. There are comforts all around, there's a warm hearth. The child has loving parents by it. She is well clothed. Her future education is secured. There is food in her belly, and she's protected. And now, in this place of love and warmth, I want you to spot a window in the room. And I want you to zoom in on the little face that's looking in. It's the face of another child, but this child is outside in the cold. The child has tattered clothes, is hungry, lost the father perhaps to heroin. Mother is out trying to make a living. The child has no future. There's no education waiting for her. She is the subject of my talk today. And every word that I say from here on, and the work that I've been doing for the last 11 years has been focused on these children. There are a few things that I want you to suspend for the next 15 minutes and try to accept the definitions that I'm going to share with you. We often look at poverty as if it's a disease. It's somebody's fault. And yet, what I would like to share with you is this definition. Poverty is not anyone's fault. It's part of a series of events. It's a choice that society makes. And it emerges out of inequality. It's created, very importantly, by a set of random events. And then it is enforced by man-made systems. And then we pass it on, generation after generation. And that is done by systems of our governance. When you look at a child, like the child I just described to you, you think poverty in the now. What you do not see is the story behind. And the story behind stretches generations. From the very first time that man settled down and started forming a society, there was negotiation. There was negotiation around the share of resources. By luck, by chance, some people were on the right side of that negotiation and the others weren't. And that laid the grounds for inequality. And then, when society set down two rules, they allowed it to continue. The first rule is property rights. And the second is inheritance rights. Property rights allow you to own something, and it's protected by the state. Now, whether you deserve to have it or not, whether it was acquired through luck, by chance, through illegal means, that's not the point. The state protects your property, your right to that property. And obviously, when you've got that property, others who may not have it do not have access to it. And then when your children come into this world, inheritance rights guarantee that you hand that same property over to your child. And the child gets a head start. Remember the child inside the room and the child standing outside that window looking in. It is neither the achievement of the child to be inside that room because it was only born in that circumstance, and it's not the fault of the child outside the window because that child was only born there by circumstance. And yet, that little fact, just the miracle of birth, had set them on different trajectories for the rest of their lives. When that child comes into this world, and here's something very interesting that I'll share with you. The grounds for inequality, poverty, are laid at the point of conception. So we're not even waiting for the child to be in this world at the point of conception when it is but a fetus. The grounds have been laid. And how so? So we know that women, when they're expecting a child, their health, their behaviors affect the future of the child a lot. If the mother happens to be a heroin addict or an alcoholic, has to work hard even late into her pregnancy, that is definitely going to have impacts on the child. And it so happens that there are sections of society where this behavior is prevalent. So what happens to a child, a fetus which is being conceived in a womb of a mother who does not have the right nutrition, who does not have the right prenatal care, who is now growing inside a body which may potentially be even abusing itself. The child, even before it is born, has already been set on a different trajectory from one who's being conceived, who's growing inside womb, which is well taken care of, has access to prenatal health, etc. And so by the time the child comes into this world, the trajectories are already different. I'm going to share some more things with you. This quote is from an American economist called Frank Knight, and I'll read it out for you. The ownership of personal or material productive capacity is based on a complex mixture of inheritance, luck, and effort, and probably in that relative order. So what you're really saying over here, what this economist is saying, is that effort, personal effort, has probably the least impact on your life, on your success. Mostly it's circumstances, luck, pure luck. And yet we have this belief that, it's okay if people, even if they're born poor, if they work really hard, and you give them the right access to tools, they're going to pick themselves up out of poverty. And that's where we start blindsiding ourselves to the real problem. I'll share another quote with you. 80% of real income came from family, background, and country of birth. The rest comes from chance. This is another analysis done by another economist called Branko Milanovic. Again, the role of chance. But this guy is saying something even more radical. What he's saying is that 80% comes down to your family background and country of birth. That's what determines your real income through your life. And let's not stop there. I'm going to quote a third person called Per Melander, who's got a fantastic book called The Anatomy of Inequality. And what he says over here, the mathematics of probability can create inequality even if the starting point was equal. So essentially, here's what I'm saying. And it's very important to get this part right. Because inequality is not just is being passed on through inheritance. But here's the kicker. Here's the real problem. If anybody over here has studied probability, and you start drawing a sequence of events, if two people are negotiating with each other on equal terms, they are equal when they start out and they have assets which are equal. Their negotiating power is equal. And in that one year they negotiate and they come to an agreement of a share of resources. And then the following year they again negotiate between each other and have their share of resources, and so on and so forth. After a certain amount of time, luck or bad luck will start playing its part. At some point, probability dictates that one of the two may have an event occur in their lives. This event could be anything. Maybe it's a natural disaster, maybe somebody very important in the family passes away, somebody has a hospitalization, it takes up all the resources of the family. The next year when they sit down to negotiate again, now they're unequal. Not because of any other reason than the fact that luck intervened. And now, the year after that, based on the negotiation of this year, the divergence increases, and then it increases and increases even further. And that's how, even if you start at a point of equality, over the years, you create inequality just by probability. But then, the problem is, what impact does this have? And I've just shown you a study over here. This was carried out by 2 Italian economists for a small town in Italy called Florence. And what they found was that in 1427, the richest families in that town were still the richest families in that town in 2011. So while it's great for those families, I'm sure, the luck of inheritance really helped pass on that inequality, but what about the rest? What are the people who were not part of the haves in 1427? Well, they pretty much continued along that same route. That's what it is. And today we know in the US, the figure is ridiculous. It's like the top 0.1% almost owns as much as half the population in the US. And this divergence is just increasing exponentially. Because what has happened with digitization and technology, this trend has been amplified. Well, it sounds really hopeless, doesn't it? I mean, how do you fix this? Is this how it's going to go on? Well, so I want to talk about how historically inequality has been dealt with. And this is not by design, obviously, but this is how it's happened. And there was a great study carried out by Walter Schneidel, and he's published a book called The Great Leveler, in which he describes the 4 horsemen who historically have leveled society. So when there's inequality, something's happened that's brought it all down to almost the same level, and everybody's had a fresh start. 4 horsemen. The first one, mass mobilization warfare. So not just a war. We're talking about a war like World War I or World War II that decimates everything. That's one way to have equality. Bring everybody down to the same level. Nothing. The second, state collapse. So remember, I said inequality is something that's been propagated by the state because it is protected by the state. So when there is no state, there is nothing to protect. The barriers, the artificial walls that we've put up, and everything comes down, and then you're back to zero. The third is catastrophic plagues. So I'm talking about the kind of plague that hit Europe in the Middle Ages, Black Death, that wipes out millions and millions, that takes away 20–25% of the population. That levels society as well. And the fourth is transformative revolution. Now, transformative revolution, out of these 4, is the only one that has the potential to be positive. The other 4 sound really painful to me. The other 3, sorry. But here's the thing, transformative revolutions, we are in a space where technology has suddenly become the big thing. That's what I've been working on for the last 11 years. We say, technology is coming up, digitization is going to change the world, and now poverty is going to be eradicated because, we've got things like digital financial services. We've got smartphones. The poor are going to have an equal level playing field. You can deliver education through smartphones. You can let them trade through smartphones, etc., etc., etc. What I have learned in the last decade or so of working on the side of financial inclusion and through digitization is something that Kentaro describes as his law of amplification. And the law is something like this. Technology does not change human behavior. It only amplifies it. So if there's good behavior in the society, it'll get amplified. But if there is bad behavior in the society, that also gets amplified. Technology is just a tool. It is not the fix-all. It is not the revolution that will remove inequality and it will, eradicate poverty. That can be a part. It can be an expression. It can be one of the tools that is used, but it is not the fix-all. Well, then, you may ask me, oh, what do we do? This sounds really hopeless. That was about it. That's what we had. Well, I just want to bring one last point over here about agency. And I want to give you an example about this because I've worked with microfinance, microinsurance, mobile money. Here's an example from microfinance. The assumption is that, if we give a loan to this woman who's from a underdeveloped area, we give her a loan, she's going to take that loan, she's going to invest it in her business, or she's going to set up a new business, and then as her business grows, she's going to pay back that loan, and then she comes back for the second loan, and then she invests again in her business, and the business grows, and she pays back, and so we graduate her out of poverty. Now that's the working hypothesis. But I'm going to give you a scenario. Just like that little girl I described, that little child I described outside the window in the beginning. Think about a typical girl born in the rural sector of our society. The day she's born, she's informed that she's already a second-class citizen. By the time that she's 8, 9 years old, she's already realized the differences between the two genders. By the time she's 13, 14, now she's being prepped for marriage. That's what she's been told. Her role models are her aunts around her who already have 2 or 3 kids, and all she can dream of and has been told is that you're going to grow up and you're going to get married, and that's your future, looking after kids. By the time she's 18, she is married off. And from there on, she has a first child, second child, and now she's completely bogged down with raising her family. Now, here's the irony. If at the age of 25, this microfinance institute comes up to her and says, here's a loan, take this loan from us and go create a business. And then you will grow that business, you will pay back that loan, and then you will invest again in that business, and you will grow even bigger. The question I have for you is, how do you do that to somebody whose agency you've already taken away? It's been stripped away way earlier in her life. She's not going to suddenly turn around. Does she have the capacity, the capability? Does she have the mindset? So what is the Microfinance Institute probably going to do? It's going to go and it's going to give a loan to somebody who's more likely to pay it back. And who happens to be that somebody? Somebody whose capacities are already developed. Why are those capacities already developed? Because that person had development opportunities earlier on in life. Why did that person have development opportunities earlier in life? Because they came from a background of family that allowed them that opportunity earlier on in life. And so, that's the irony. We perpetuate the inequality, we accelerate it, even as we invest in it, to eradicate it. So what's the solution? Well, for one thing that I want to make clear is that there is no one fix-all, there is no easy fix. It is going to take intervention at a number of different levels. And the most difficult one is going to be recognizing, changing the mindset, recognizing that economic system descends from the political system. And this is very important for us to realize, that the economic system is an expression of the political system. If the political system is elitist, or it is ruled by the few, the economic system that descends from it, I guarantee you, is going to be also elitist by design. It will favor those who have already, because the decisions, the legislation is done by those who have. So that's the first thing we need to acknowledge. The second thing we need to acknowledge is that wealth is created by societies, it's not created by individuals. Now this is again something which is a bit of a mind shift. Because when we talk about creation of wealth, capitalism and other such systems enforce this belief that it is you, individually, who achieved this success and made all this money. What you will never hear is somebody telling you that, look, you're a product of circumstance and luck, and your effort, though valuable, probably does not have as much to contribute to your success as you think. So who created the wealth? It was society. If there was money that you made by selling something, there was somebody on the other side who paid that money to buy your service. So wealth didn't just drop out of the sky in your lap. It was created by the society around you. So when it comes to distribution of that wealth, don't forget the entire value chain, because that's what helped you create it in the first place. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that no matter what form of governance we employ, power will end up concentrating in the hands of the few. This is extremely important for us to acknowledge, whether it's democracy, communism, socialism, what have you. Power will eventually concentrate in the hands of the few, because that is natural tendency. That is what societies do. They accumulate, and they accumulate in the hands of the few. So the first thing that I want to share with you is that governance must have a feedback loop. You must always listen to what is happening in the society around you and be willing to change the very foundations of your society if that is required. And that means things like constitutions. It means governance documents. It means, even the charter that you put down, you should be willing to revise it if it's not working. It will only happen if you're listening to the feedback coming from society. If there are poor in your society, if like Pakistan has like 30% of the poor people living below the poverty line, that's telling you something. Something isn't working. And if you look around South Asia, you look at countries in Africa, the number of people who are living below the poverty line is offensive. And like I said in the beginning, poverty is a choice. This is a choice that this is continuing. It's a choice that we're making. We need legislative reform. I would even go so far as to say, well, I pointed out that democracy has its own inherent flaws. It's already promoting elitism in our country. It's quite obvious. The people who are legislating in the government are coming from very landed backgrounds, positions of power. So what do you need? I'm going to propose something. I'm going to propose a representative advisory body. And when I say representative, pick up the NADRA database and try to get a smattering, get a collection of citizenry together from all backgrounds of life, and let it be representative. If 30% of our population is below the poverty line, constitute 30% of that body coming from that exact sector. Why? They may not be the most educated, and they may not, as we like to put it, they may not even know what's good for them. I would challenge that completely. But they bring a perspective that we do not have. At the time that we legislate, we create laws to govern their lives. They're not even in the room, and their voices are not even heard. So fix that. Bring them as part of that discussion. They need to be there. Their interests need to be protected. Number two, use layered taxation. Have the rich give back to the poor, because the rich are rich because they are poor. And if we believe that societies create wealth and not individuals, then we must also believe that when there is a surplus of wealth, it must flow back. Universal basic income, that can help with one thing, the scarcity mindset. If you haven't heard of the scarcity mindset, I encourage you to read a little bit about it. Scarcity is when you do not have enough of something. It triggers psychological behaviors. It gets you to tunnel in on the thing that you want immediately. It may be food, it may be money, but it gets you to tunnel in on all that. It reduces your capacity for decision making. It reduces your IQ. So get rid of the scarcity, make basic income available to everybody across the board. Education and development opportunities, they need to be free and they need to be accessible to everyone. Not those who can pay for it, not those who can pay an elitist, elitist premium and then have the rest going to government schools or not even going there, but make it free, make it compulsory, make it absolutely standard across the board, because that's where capacity building is done. And use data and AI to segment citizens into focus buckets. Now is something a little more radical. This is where I'm saying that if we are now collecting data, we are digitizing societies, we are also collecting behavioral data. That behavioral data should enable us to segment our citizenry into buckets, and then we design governance solutions for those buckets. And lastly, I just want to end my little talk with a poem that I'm going to read out. It's called The End of the Tale, and it's by Siegfried Lindstrom. Sweet little child, the story ends here. The young royals arrived in their kingdom and were greeted with pomp or cheer. As for you, the time for slumber has come. What happened next? Well, there isn't much to say. Once their dangerous quest was finally done, things happened that happen here every day to you and me and everyone. The years passed, and the princess grew old and fat. The prince grew old too, but bony. She got migraines and had family spats. He waged war and was gouty. But never you mind, now is not the time for worry. Nestle in and lay your head down, and dream that you are that very prince who carried the princess to safer ground. And once your dreams are over, and they've taken you that far, the sun will have found you in bed. Then quick, you'll rise quick and put your clothes on. For tomorrow, there is hay to be shred. Thank you very much.